Hello and welcome to TribNet 2025. My name is Tammy Teisler and I am going to be walking you through our tribute manufacturing programs. We're going to start with the setup and work through some of the maintenance and day-to-day processing. And I also, before I get started, I just wanted to note that there are several PDFs. There's a flow chart, a manufacturing flow chart, as well as a program overview PDF attached with this online session. So if you want to pull those, you'll be able to kind of follow along in the steps as we're walking through the session together. First, just a clarification of the difference between a regular job versus a job costed job. So we've got regular fabs. Those fabs are bill of materials that do show up on your OWIP. So we are transferring the components into the work in process area. However, there's no OBJSM record that gets created. The key factor to setting up a job costed fab is that the OBJSM record is pinged and started. And that means that unlike a regular fab that closes automatically when the parent item is shipped, the job costed fab will remain open and it only final costs when you're ready for it to final cost. So that OBJSM record keeps it open and additional costs can be posted into the parent as needed. You can enter in additional labor, burden, make sure all of the components have been shipped, and at that point, do your final costing. So we're going to start, and again, if you're reviewing or looking at that flow chart, we're going to start and we're going to talk about the setup programs first, and then we'll jump into some of the cost maintenance programs and then the job scheduling programs. So this for the initial setup, this ZF27 program, this is where you are flagging which of your profit centers are going to have all of their either their labor for Manalay or all of their burden through Manbird posted through those two programs. And you've got two separate screens. So you've got a separate one for Manalay and one for Manbird. You've got all of your profit centers listed here. If you enter or select a yes, what that means is that profit center will only enter all of its labor and all of its burden through the Manalay and Manbird programs. Again, two different screens, so you can have yes on one, no on the other. Those can be kept separately. No, what a no means is if you are doing job costing in a profit center that has a no, those profit centers actually can enter labor and burden at the level of OQE, so you can directly enter them into your bill of materials. However, if you do enter any labor in Manalay or any burden in Manbird, again, we're going to talk about these program acronyms here in a little bit, but they will be overwritten anything that was selected or entered at the BOM level. So this is just a way for you to tell the system if you have any profit centers that are strictly going to be entering labor and burden through the job costing programs. Initial setup in the man program, this manufacturing defaults, this is where you can define and you can set these up. The star profit center record will be the default or the master record for all profit centers. If any of your profit centers need to have different labor classes, you can create individual profit center records through this man program. But again, these are where you're selecting or describing the different types of labor that you'll be able to associate with your jobs through the Manalay program. Next, for initial setup, you're going to want to enter in or add in your employee labor information. So in this MAN EMM program, this is where the employee labor master maintenance is done. You're going to set up a labor number for each of your employees and select the profit center that the specific inventory or these specific rates are processing for. And you'll be setting up a standard, a time and a half, and a double time rate for each of the employees. Now, Now, this set of costs, they're associated with that employee. They can be based on hourly wages and overhead. We've got companies that do an average or a standard, and all employees have the same rates, or depending on the level of seniority that they are within the manufacturing area, you can have different rates. They don't directly have to reflect that employee's actual hourly wage, but this is how you're going to assign the costs that will go into each of the bill of materials through the Manolay program. You can also note here the records can be added for outside companies. So if you are adding any labor that needs to be associated with a bill of material from something outside, you can set up a labor number that is included for those outside companies versus employee names. You can list out these as well to see what is already available or what you've already set up within the program. The initial setup for your OBJSMM, so this is the maintenance of the order bill of material job schedule setup. This program that we're going to talk about the OBJSM, which again is that place where we're going to be able to add information for our jobs and also define when we're closing those jobs. This area or this maintenance screen is allowing you the access to change what some of these fields are titled if there are different items that you need to control and or need to report out on. So as you're looking at this screen, the defaults are for star is the default record. You can set them up. You can set records up each individually for each profit center if you need to. But here are the fields that OBJSM is going to show you currently. You know, it's set up to be shipping sales order number, system quote. We've got a job number, a quote number. If you look at this screen, you can change any of those fields that are white and not grayed out. Those can be changed so that you can reflect the title that you want to report out on. That might more accurately reflect what it is that you need to do during your job scheduling process. Maybe you don't need a co-engineer, but you do need to track a contract number or a different type of number. So on the left, you've got items that are free-formed by character. On the right, you've got dates that you have the ability to change the titles to. So like the accepted date or the received date, that could be changed to be a different date that you would like to, again, track. Grade fields cannot be maintained. And this is, I don't want to say at one time, you're not coming in here one time to maintain. If you find that as you're progressing, you need to make a change to any of the titles, you can always come back in and change them. However, they will reflect and change for everything that's out there within that profit center. The maintainable fields, just a list of these. On the left, we've got the items that are character strings and the amount of characters that you have in each of those fields. If you don't need a job number, the title can be changed to be something else, so on and so forth, with the quote number of the program. We also have on the right side are those dates, again, that are maintainable. Instead of an accepted or a received date, you can change those to be whatever needs to be reflected within your warehouse area. After those initial setups, we're going to start kind of walking through, if you're following on the flow chart, we're going to start by entering one of these fabs. So we're going to enter an internal fab bill of material example in quote entry. So during the quote entry, the key to this is that the source on the B line will be the entering profit center, and you'll be able to you'll see that the entering profit center creates the PO. You're going to get a PO that gets created for the internal fab. And within that bill of material, you need to make sure that you add at least one labor line, and you can add as many burden lines. You don't have to have a burden line, but you can add as many burden lines as needed. And as long as those are within that bill of material, you're going to be able to accumulate labor and burden through the Manolay and the Manbird programs that will then get costed out onto this bill of material when you do the final costing. Some considerations to make when talking about quote entry, again, you need to have at least one labor line, so an L line type on the bill of material, and one burden line. That's an intangible line type, and we'll talk about those here in a minute. During fabrication, the Manolay posts your actual job costs, and the Manbird program is going to post your actual burden costs, such as freight, crate and skids, and manuals. All of that get posted based on what you've entered into those two programs. Costs from Manolay and Manbird are carried over when the fab is complete. And then at the end, we talked about the OBJSM record that gets created. Jobs are closed using either a CP as a complete, an FC as a final cost, or you can also use an XX, and that closes the job but doesn't save to history. So just some considerations as you're kind of looking at this process that we're going to walk through. Once you've created the bill of material and you've updated your quote, it prints the internal work order through the QPP program. So it can either be an auto print like normal, or you can individually print them like you normally do. This internal fab, you can view the details in QMQ and see this. This is an internal work order linked to the customer's sales order that we entered it on, and you can scroll to see those. Again, this is the internal PO used to receive the finished goods. So you can see my bill of material parent is the only thing listed on this purchase order. And this is what I'm going to receive this internal build onto so that then I can ship it to my customer. Again, following through the flow chart, if you're looking at that, the quote entry, the QPP, at this point, we're going on to release and print our components. So we've got our bill of material parent, we've got our purchase order that's out there for us to receive the parent when we are ready to ship that material to the customer. And now we are going to release as needed, either auto release or through ORM. We're going to release the components that we have currently that are ready to go into WIP. So anything ready to move to work in process, I can utilize ORM to then the add function to release the components. I can also, you can auto release them based on the required dates and the required date type that you use on your bill of material. But then the OPL packing list gets created to take that inventory off the shelf, move it into WIP so that we can build the assembly. I do have customers, and we talk a lot about this. You know, some customers, when they're building bill of materials, waiting until that last moment to pull the components out is not, that's not helpful for your warehouse, not knowing that that inventory piece is not available. So this is critical. When you are ready, you should be shipping components on a daily basis that are available and ready to be pulled. And as you pull those packing slips, getting them moved into the assembly area. Ship those components to WIP. So the OS process then and the OIP, your order, that OS order ship components, they're going to move into WIP through the OS program in your nightly OIP. Your on-hand inventory then is reduced and WIP is increased as the project progresses. So as we go, I'm looking at this order in OM, and I can see I don't have several of the components on back order anymore because I have shipped them into WIP. The finished goods are going to remain on back order until we receive the product and ship to the customer. Labor and burden lines also accumulate the cost throughout the project. So, it could take weeks, it could take months. And as we continue to build these projects, those labor and burden lines can be entered on a daily basis. Components can be shipped to WIP on a daily basis, continuously adding into the cost of the material and keeping you on track for what you truly have available in your warehouse for other orders. The OBJSM program. So at this point, we're going to talk about the job scheduling programs. And OBJSM is the big, or that key indicator where a job is going to be job costed. You have to establish the record so that the order will not get closed until it's final costed. So if you don't create the OBJSM record, that's where it just is a regular bill of material that ships to WIP. And when the parent is received and shipped, then it is final costed and closed. The OBJSM record is that pinging point that keeps it open. And there are 3 ways that you can create those records. When you're in OQE, if you are entering at the parent detail line, you can type OB as an option, and that will create the OBJSM record. You also, so that would be a 1-for-1, one-time thing. I can throw it up in OQE. You can also set a flag, the flag in IPPM, that an OBJSM auto setup default for that product code to always create an OBJSM record, whether or not OB is entered in OQE or not. And then the third way is you can manually create the OBJSM record by going into OBJSM itself and adding that sales order and line item to that maintenance screen. So this is an example of the first option, which is adding the OBJSM through OQE and that OB. So when I am in OQE and I'm on the parent item, I can select OB for job scheduler data in the bottom option banner, and it will pop up the OBJSM detail. And here you can also see in the pop-up that I'm seeing here where it says the record does not exist. Do I want to add it? I can say yes, I can say no, and I can also copy from another order if I want to pull details from somewhere else. These are those key fields that we talked about in that OBJSM M screen, where you can maintain what it is that you're tracking. So some of these fields are maintainable, some of them are not, but those titles, you can make them reflect what it is that you need to track and keep on schedule as you're doing your bill of material jobs in the scheduling. Again, this is the OB option. Adding this will create the record so that final costing has to happen on this bill of material. The other option that you have for an automatic OBJSM record is in IPPM. So for your profit center product code record, you can set a flag that the OBJSM auto setup, if you flag that, it will automatically create the OBJSM record for all internal fab bill of material parents that you create. So again, that's when you want the entire product code for that profit center to always create an OBJSM record, and you don't have to remember to do that. So you would maintain it here and it would update automatically. Adding the OBJSM record manually, if you didn't add it in OQE and you wanted to make sure that it got added after the fact, and it wasn't pinged in IPPM to be an auto default, you can come into OBJSM, you can enter your order number and your line number, and the system, if it does not see that it already exists, it asks if you want to add it, or if you want to look at the next record, or if you want to copy it. So again, those are your options. You can create those again after the sales order is updated if you forgot to do that during OQE. So this OBJSM program, information gets maintained in this OBJSM area as the job is being scheduled and as you are continuing to work on the WIP for that bill of material. The things that you can maintain in here, the related sales order, the quotation number, the internal, if there is, or maybe a customer job number that's associated with the job. The manufacturing supervisor that's assigned to the job can be maintained here. The engineers involved in the job, the percentage of the job that is complete is also something that is tracked, and the job schedule sequence number. Note basically use as many of the fields or as few as needed. You don't have to enter anything. Maybe you just want the record to be out there until final costed and you don't need to track any of that information. But it can be helpful, and we're going to go over a lot of the reports that can be utilized to help you, kind of walk down the path of continuing the job and getting all of the associated costs with the order. Note, you can use as many, again, of the fields as you want to. The fields that are validated are the shipping sales order and the quote number. And again, remember, you can maintain these field names in OBJSM-M. If you find there's something you really want to track that's not currently there. The dates that this OBJSM is going to allow you to track is the date the job was received from the customer, the date the job was accepted, that you confirmed that you would do the work, the estimated start date, which is used by OBJSM as the secondary sort behind your said schedule sequence number. So you'll kind of see that in some of the reports moving forward. The actual start date that you actually started versus the estimated start date. And again, you can report those things out. The date the assembly requirements were released to purchasing. You've got the date the work order was received by the manufacturing department, the date the inventory required to complete the assembly was received. You've also got the customer documentation, the date that it was required, the date the assembly was sent to the testing department, and the shipping required date. Again, a lot of those are maintainable if you wanted to reflect or report out on different dates than what are listed here. Also, a different additional information that's maintained in OBJSM, the required and the doc qualifier information. So these are 2-character alphanumeric fields that are user defined and are used to qualify any of the required and the customer doc dates. So if we were going to give an example to this, AA might indicate a date is firm, or ZZ might indicate it's a flexible date. These, again, are dates that you as a company are determining and utilizing. So depending on how many you need, this is a way for you to be able to sort and report out on these scheduled jobs. The schedule sequence number, that is up to 6 characters. It is also alphanumeric, and this is a user-defined field, and it's going to be used to assign priority to your manufacturing jobs. So key to this, and that's why it's bolded, it is used as the primary sort on the order bill of material job schedule report, the OBJSR that we're going to talk about in a few slides. And so this, again, is free form, 6 characters, up to 6 characters, alphanumeric, user defined. Keep as consistent a number as, keep a consistent number of characters. So what that means is, if I'm using 2 characters, I would use 0 to 12 and 99. If because of the way that the sort happens, because if I just did 2 and 12 and 99, 2 is going to not appropriately sort, but 0 to will. So again, if you want the same, keep consistent number of characters. So 0 to 1299, or if I'm going 3 characters, I would need to do 025 or 002 in order for that to sort properly with 123 and 999. And again, this is impacting the OBJSR report. Note the numbers sort before alpha characters. This is your example or viewing an OBJSM when you can either add the records here, or again, as you're going in to maintain them. I have noted here to do a question mark OBJSM to see the help document. The field and code section does list a full field definition for each of these fields if you would like to see what they are expected to be utilized for. But from this screen, there are a lot of things that then can follow through to your reporting, as well as keep everyone on track for what your priorities are. And you can see some of these dates, some of the names. That required qualifier on this one was an AA, and the doc qualifier was a ZZ, and that's going to control, again, how things are sorted and how we know whether or not it's a hard-coded date or not. Also, this OBJSR report. So OBJSM is the maintenance and the updates that we're doing, as needed into each of the jobs. This order bill of material job schedule report is an overview of all of your pending jobs, and it allows you to see at a bird's eye view how each of these jobs, where their status is. So info included, you're going to see that schedule sequencer that we talked about, and so that it can sort by that, and the sales order and line number associated with, and the product code and item number that along with it, the required date, estimated and actual start dates, the job completion percentage is also on the report, and the labor that has been completed. The sort sequence for this report is profit center and then that schedule sequencer that's assigned. So if you don't have a sequence number, a blank sequence number prints after all of the sequenced projects. So that also, if it's blank, it indicates that it's new in the sequence field, so that needs to be sorted and sequenced in where it needs to fall in the job scheduler. Estimated start date, sequenced sorts first, and they're batched together, and then non-sequenced are batched together. So each of those two batches then are sorted by their estimated start date. And then you're also then the required date. That customer's required date serves as the third and final sort. So each profit center has its own section. Schedule sequencer assigned is the first sort, estimated start date is the second, and then required date. The typical scenario, you're going to print this OBJSR in the morning. You're going to prioritize the jobs that you've got on the listing, and then use that OBJSM program to assign schedule sequences to all the new jobs and update any additional information as you're working. You're going to print and assign and maintain those OBJSM records as often as needed. And then each time you're printing out the OBJSR to reflect or review and prioritize jobs, that newly added information will be accessed at that point. So an example of this OBJSR, this is an example report for that bill of material job scheduler. You can see here the selection options. So if you are just printing for one profit center or one product code or one customer number, you can do groups, you can do ranges, and you can also select whether or not you want just external fabs, internal fabs, or both. So those are the selections when running the OBJSR, and then you'll see the detailed information that prints on the report, plus the sequenced versus a new schedule. I can see I have a sequence 3 on the first job on my list and a new. So for that new one, I need to go in and determine what scheduled sequence number it needs to be applied. Another report that we have, and again, all of these are listed on that flow chart. We also have them listed on the program review, so you can get some added detail. I always mention, if you've sat through a class with me before, if you have any questions about any of these, question mark and the program name to get that detailed information. But this next one is the job scheduling report, so the OPJS. And this is an order picking bill of material job scheduler report. So you've got two options, option A and option B. Option A is the job schedule report, which lists all internal fab bill of materials that can be completed with available stock that you currently have. The second option is the job schedule expedite report. So it lists the components needed to complete bill of materials with insufficient stock. So both of these reports can be very beneficial. And the second one, the option B, does include a summary page by vendor to assist with your expediting as well. An example of this is the option A. So this is the picking bill of material job schedule report, option A. And here are fabs that can be completed with existing stock. We're seeing the information, also what quantities needed for the assembly, and what has been shipped or released, and what quantity has not been released yet. So you can see all the details from this report. And then this is our option B. So this is the Same bill of material, job schedule report, except these are the components that we have that are necessary to complete, that are needed to complete the fabs with insufficient stock. So we can view those. And then again, it also has that vendor assigned area in the back of this option B. This is then the summary by vendor for ease of expediting. So I can now see all of the things that I still need to bring in because I have insufficient stock. And it also lists for me if I have POs out there to expedite those. It shows the promise dates and I can grab new scheduled ship dates from those vendors. The next report that we're going to talk about on this kind of list of reports, and these reports you're going to use throughout the job costing process. This report is the OWIP report. Now, this report includes things that are not job costed as well. It's all of your open bill of materials, but it can be printed in several ways. So we've got all WIP orders. There's multiple report type options. It does list the shipped, back ordered, and any dollar amounts for all lines on a bill of material when it is listed, and it includes subtotals and grand totals for all bill of materials that met the criteria that you selected for. So you can run it for all WIP lines. So if I run option A, I'm going to get everything that's in a WIP status. If I do option B, it's for components that the back order, I've got component back orders, but my parents are not back ordered anymore. So those are orders in which we have closed out the parent, received the parent, shipped the parent, received the parent, and the components still have back order quantities that need to be cleaned up. Option C is for only orders with dollars remaining in WIP. So as I'm shipping into WIP or I'm shipping out of WIP, I can have negative dollars remaining in WIP. I can have positive dollars remaining in WIP, depending on the average cost of the pieces that I've shipped in or the costs that were associated with lines that were intangible. At this point, a C will let me see what's remaining, what I need to do to complete the orders. The D or single WIP line is if I'm just focusing on one line, one bill of material parent and its components. I can run the report for just that one area. It is also run by profit centers, so when you're going to run your profit center reports individually. This report's useful for auditing purposes, tracking your cash flow in and out of WIP, and locating inventory. So you can utilize it in several different ways. An example of the report listing for me. I can see the parent item. I can see that for this parent item, the parent is still on back order. I've shipped component 20 to WIP. I haven't shipped component 30 yet, and I don't have any associated labor or burden costs yet. So I'm only seeing my component 20 listed in my shipped dollars, and that is what is currently remaining in WIP. I've taken that off the shelf. It's sitting in my work in process, and that is also a key for you. I've taken it out of available. It's not in my on-hand inventory. I no longer am reconciling it against my shelf inventory account. I'm now reconciling it against inventory work in process. Okay, this next report, the job scheduling, the OPSTL report, is an order picking bill of material structure inquiry. This displays and lists, so I can get a report and I can also just display information. So it's key, pretty useful. I have a quantity option and I have a cost option. So on the quantity option, if I go into OPSTL and select Q for displaying and printing quantities. The quantity needed, I'll see the quantity needed to build an assembly. I'll see the released quantities, the shipped quantities, and the unreleased quantities. So again, that's the Q option where I'm viewing the quantities per assembly. The cost option is an audit tool or an audit report inquiry that shows and displays and prints the costs. So I would see back ordered quantities with their cost. I'd see the shipped quantities with their costs and a comparison of the estimated cost to actual cost that have shipped to work in process. So an example or looking at this, OPSTL, the top is the quantity option for quantity for assembly. And when I'm looking at this, I can see the quantity I need by assembly. I can see the released and shipped quantities and the unreleased quantities as well. The second option or the cost option is for auditing. And at this point, I can see the back ordered quantity, the shipped quantity, the back ordered cost, and the shipped cost, and then an overall component back order cost, shipped cost, total, and actual, the parent, back ordered cost, shipped cost, and total, and then the margins as well. There are some ZIFM options or selectable features when it comes to the OPSTL, and that is whether or not I want on the listing to show me bin locations. Also, whether or not I want it to suppress deleted lines on my bill of materials, and whether or not I want it to print long descriptions. So those are just company settings that you would set based on preference. And then for the listing option for the OPSTL, I'm seeing the same information, whatever I selected when I either did the Q or the C option, and then I can print that out to a spooler or a PDF to review. Okay, so those were our the programs that we were maintaining, some of the reporting out on our process or our job costed orders. Now we're going to talk about maintaining the costs. So the Manolay program, that's the first of two. We're going to talk about Manolay and Manbird. Within Manolay, we can enter the manufacturing labor. We can maintain those. So on a daily basis, I can pull into the Manolay area. I am entering by profit center my employee number. So we set those employee numbers up in that man program. I'm going to select the employee number, the job costing order that I am working with, and I'm going to enter in daily times that that employee is working. I'm also going to add, because I've entered the RA number, I'm going to select the labor class and the type of, I'm going to enter in the type of labor that which labor class we're entering this into, and then the time in and out so it can get associated with that project. So you're going to use this daily, enter each employee's hours and labor classes for the day. This also can be listed, and there's a daily log that you can review for accuracy, and you clear the file after you review it. So you've got the information. Once it's entered in the system, it is then costed to that line. So in this case, the 223385 is the order number, and the line number for my labor in my first bill of material on that order was line 40, and that's why I'm associating this 60 minutes worth of standard labor time under labor class 1 to that line. And based on the costs that I associated with that in the man area, that is where, the man EMM area, that's going to associate those costs with this bill of material line. Here then is an example of the Manolay report at the end of the day. The entries basically accumulate the sales order line numbers that I entered, and then the program ManINV is going to generate an internal invoice for all of those costs. Here I can see each of the lines, and in this case, the work was done on the same line employee number, but different classes of work were done, different minutes were done, and the total was listed and applied into Manolay and then through ManINV. Our other cost maintenance option or program is the man-bird program. So this is where manufacturing burden gets entered. It is used to post overhead burden costs to internal fab bill of material orders. Burden posts to whatever intangible item I have set up in the bill of material. So if, let's say, I just have this item number I selected, it's an intangible and it is set up as burden. It must exist in IMM with an I attribute, but you can call it whatever you want. It has to exist also in IDM for any profit centers that you're going to associate this cost to. It can be included in pre-configured bill of material structures and added during OQE or later in OM, but you need to have some kind of burden as an intangible on the bill of material in order for you to apply man-bird burden to that bill of material parent. So manufacturing burden entry as you are entering the burden. So here, the burden line, you can see the full detail for all burden postings, the retained earnings. It's reported out through ManBird. You can see it in the program OBHIQ. But for this, I have entered into ManBird a quantity item number and then quantities associated with the line numbers, and those entries are going to accumulate and update through ManIMV on the internal invoices. It'll add that cost. One other thing for the ZF35 for the ManBird, corrections to ManBird are done as additional adjusting lines, so you can do them negatives or positives into ManBird. Burden adjustments will book through ICJ, and the normal I/C.AGJ post to inventory adjustment expense. You can use I/C.ADJ.BRD to set a unique posting if you want to for these burden adjustments. So in this case, if I wanted that to post differently than my regular inventory adjustments, I can set that up in ZF35. So the MAN INV program, this cost maintenance program, this is where the invoices, the manufacturing invoice gets updated. And Manolay and Manbird, anything that was entered into those programs, it will run through the invoice job stream. So after I've entered it, it will take all the labor and burden costs and OIP will associate them. So we recommend running this MAN INV daily or at least weekly, because as you are entering in the labor and the burden, when you update this MAN INV, that's when it's going to ping or associate with your costs of the jobs, and you'll see them listed out on your reports. You definitely want to include it in your month-end processing prior to the final OIP so that anything throughout the month that was missed would get updated. This MAN INV replaces OS for these burden items because they aren't items that you're shipping. So you don't do OS for these lines. There is also a ZIFM option where you can kill these labor and burden WIP invoices that get created by MAN INV. That is under section MAN INV if you search that when you do go into ZIFM, and it's called the kill labor and burden manufacturing WIP invoices. The MAN INV program, this again for Manolay and Manbird, you're going to select either all or individual WIP order lines when you run it. Obviously, when you're running it during month end, you're probably grabbing everything. But if you just wanted to update individual costs as they were happening, you can do I for individual and select which WIP line you need to update. And then an example of the report on this MAN INV, I can see listed the sales orders, the labor, the burden that was associated, the shipped quantities, the costs associated with them, what previous ship quantities were, what the actual quantity was, and then if there were any previous ship dollars and actual dollars. Some of the additional key inquiries and reports are next in this next section. This OBHIQ is for you to access the bill of material history. You can view the scheduling data, labor burden costs on internal fabs with final costs, so things that have been final costed. You can also set up ampersand PRG PAS for OBHIQ to restrict access to labor line information if you do not want that to be accessible for everyone. The OBHIQ, you can, when you are in that inquiry, you can select a variance option. So as you are looking at the lines, it will print you the original information, so the original cost for your components, burden, and labor, and then your total original cost, your total original quantity for labor, and then it prints the revised and the actual. So that information, and then the variance between the two. Again, the original, when you're looking at this, original came from OQE. Revised was if any changes were made in OM, and actual is what you ended up shipping through OS. If you do so that was the V for variance. If you do the D for detail option while you're in OBHIQ, it's going to print the original you'll view the original. You'll also see revised, actual, and variance, but it's by component line instead of a whole total. Also in OBHIQ, you can do the comment option, the T option, to see comments. Those would be any comments that were entered into the OBJSM area. You can also print a listing. This allows you can select, you can see here detail or summary. You can also select whether or not you're seeing man-a-lay detail, man-bird detail, or the variance and actual information, which information you want to see. And then there is also a cost option. So also within OBHIQ, you can see cost information. You can toggle between remaining and estimated costs and see that information not in WIP, what the estimates were and what went to WIP for components, labor burden, and the fabrication lines. This next report is the OBJWLR report, or Order Bill of Material Weekly Labor Report. So this you can select by profit center. You can do a single range group, master group, or all profit centers. You can also select the ending report date. What this report does is it shows you the 7 days prior to that ending report date, and it includes weekends with its print. So you're seeing, based on that ending report date, the order, the labor line, estimated cost, actual cost, and then information by day, 7 days of the week, and then the weekly total. The OBJCR report is an order bill of material cost report. There's two options for this. Number one is the in progress, and those are bill of materials with parent items on back order. Or you can print this report for option number two, which is the shipped parents are still open. So shipped but not closed option. When you run the OBJCR, you can select all groups, ranges of profit centers, same for product codes, customer numbers, and territories. You also get the option of whether or not you're going to print all items, specific, external or internal fabs, or both. You get man-a-lay detail, yes or no, man-bird detail, yes or no. You can also just print completed projects, and then you also have variance or actual. So do you want to see the variance that you have or just the actual costs associated? Okay, So lots of different reports that you can utilize. Now we're stepping into this last part where receiving the parent item from WIP. So we've rolled up all of these components and we've added burden and we've added, and maybe not all of the burden, maybe not all of the labor. That's the key or benefit to being able to final cost this down the road. But anything that's already rolled up, at the point when we receive the parent to the shelf, we're going to process that through QPOR. So receive the parent using the internal work order. So on the PowerPoint slide 10, we showed that internal work order that got created for us to receive the product in-house. We will then ORA, ORU and process the release of the internal invoice. A packing slip is created for the items to be shipped to the customer if we're shipping to the customer. Also, we'll OS or confirm items that get shipped to the customer, and then OIP, OIR, ORU run and print the invoice to either bill the customer or cost the merchandise to our shelf inventory. Completing the job. So this is that extra step that allows us to leave this open and add component costs or labor or burden costs until we're ready to close the project. There are 3 options for closing the job. No more costs can be added to the job once it's closed. So we're either going to do FC, which is our recommended. That saves the header. So you'll see that OBJSM record in history and the detail also. So we get header and detail information. FC is added, and you can see again, it's pointing down to this OBJSM field 14, putting in the status date and then the code for how we are completing this job. CP is another option that saves just the header, not the detail. XX saves nothing, but it still closes the job. You might actually do that if it's a really old job that shouldn't be out there. After you've final costed, so once you've completed this job, everything, no more burden, no more labor, JSOR, that's your open order report that runs normally at month end. It will cut an A001 cost adjustment, and it's going to purge, allow you then to purge out the order for the job costed once the job costing has completed. So some final areas or places that you can review this history analysis report, the OBJFC. Excuse me. This is for your closed bill of material jobs. This report, again, can be run by profit center, a group, a range, all profit centers. Same thing for product code, customer number, and territory. You can print all items. You can just do external fabs, internal fabs, or both. Summary or detail. A lot of these reports you're just going to want to, if you're going to start utilizing this or you are utilizing this, run the reports and see what the differences are. What detail is imperative or helpful. You can print the Manolay detail, you can print the Manbird detail, you can just print what's complete. Again, you can do a variance or an actual report as well. Some additional inquiries and items that can be useful. The OBCQ program is a bill of material component inquiry. So you can enter in a component item and it will look up all the parent items that are included that have that component included in them. So if you are searching for one of your jobs that includes a specific component, this OBCQ can be helpful for that. The inquiry includes line type, so you can see information on line type, quantity per assembly, profit center detail, the sequence number that it is within, and the file that it's located in. So whether or not it's a saved exploded bill of material or a product structure that's entered in OPS. Another inquiry that's helpful, this OBQ inquiry, this bill of materials inquiry lets you enter a parent item to look up all the component details. And from here, I can see the levels. If there are subassemblies, I can also see quantity per line, what assembly type it is, and then the average cost that currently sits, how much we have total on hand or available to create of this bill of material. We also have an A or available option in this OBQ, which includes quantity on hand, quantity available, and vendor on order instead of the quantity per assembly information that you see on the first example. And then one last report here, this ISCR report. This is the stock coordinators report. This report you can print by date range for a range of profit centers or selected profit centers. You can print inventory status, you can print open customer orders, and you can also print purchase order information, yes or no. What it does is it lists open sales orders with back ordered items and helps determine stock coordination, organization, and basic conversion requirements on what you need as the stock coordinator. It's based on the selection criteria that you enter. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of this manufacturing class. I hope that you have learned some new tidbits here. If you are currently using the manufacturing programs, or if you're thinking about using the manufacturing programs in the future, obviously I thank you for your time today. I will note the PowerPoint slides are available online on the Eventify app. We also have the flow chart and the program overview that can be helpful. And if you have any questions, please do not ever hesitate to reach out to support. We can go over any of the information or the setup that you might have. Again, thank you so much for your time today.